The suburban neighborhood of Chicago was bathed in the soft glow of autumn twilight. Caroline Foster picked up the mail from her doorstep as she returned home from the hospital. Among the usual envelopes, an elegant invitation printed on high-quality paper caught her attention. It was from her younger sister, Vanessa. Caroline had been compared to Vanessa for as long as she could remember. From childhood, Caroline had been the serious, responsible one, shaped to meet their parents' high expectations. Vanessa, 5 years younger, was bright, energetic, and full of confidence. Their parents often said, "You should learn from Vanessa." "I'm home," Caroline called out. 7-year-old Aiden came running down the hallway. "Mom, I drew a dinosaur at school today. The teacher said mine was the best." Caroline smiled and gently stroked his head. "That's wonderful. Will you show me later?" From the kitchen, she could see 10-year-old Emma focused on her homework, while her husband Jason, just back from work, loosened his tie and started making coffee. It was a picture-perfect moment. Caroline felt a quiet pride in the home she had built over 15 years of marriage. "Anything interesting in the mail?" Jason asked. Caroline held up the invitation. "It's from Vanessa, I think." She opened it and fell silent for a moment. "She's engaged to Richard Grant." "The developer?" Jason raised an eyebrow. "He's a big name in the industry, isn't he?" Caroline nodded. Richard Grant was a successful real estate developer, well known in local business circles. She continued reading. "The wedding's in 3 months. Looks like the whole family's invited." That night, after the kids were asleep, Caroline sat on the bed, still holding the invitation. Vanessa always seemed to be one step ahead, graduating at the top of her class from law school, landing a job at a prestigious firm, and now marrying a successful businessman. Jason came out of the shower and noticed the look on her face. "What's on your mind?" "Just Vanessa. Everything always seems to work out for her." "Caroline," he sat beside her, "you have a wonderful life, a fulfilling career, 2 amazing kids, and me." He winked. Caroline smiled. "I know. It's just what?" "Nothing," she said. "I'm just tired." The next morning, Caroline called Vanessa. "Congratulations on your engagement." "Thank you." Vanessa's voice sparkled with excitement. "I still can't believe it. He's perfect. You'll help with the wedding prep, right? We're sisters, after all." Caroline smiled. "Of course. Just tell me what you need." "Wonderful. Let's have lunch tomorrow. I want to tell you everything." Caroline checked her schedule. "That sounds good. I'm looking forward to it." After hanging up, a swirl of emotions lingered. She was truly happy for her sister, but beneath the joy was something else. Something unfamiliar. Something she couldn't quite name. She found herself reflecting on her own marriage. 15 years ago, she and Jason had married for love. The early years had been passionate, full of shared dreams and spontaneous moments. But after the children were born, their lives settled into a routine. Nothing was exactly wrong, but the spark had faded. At lunch the next day, Vanessa was glowing. She animatedly shared every detail, from how she met Richard to the story of their engagement. And Caroline listened with interest. "Caroline, I've always wanted to be like you," Vanessa said suddenly. "You were always Mom and Dad's pride." Caroline blinked in surprise. "Me? But you're the one who's more successful." Vanessa shook her head. "Maybe in my career. But you have a happy family. That's what I've always wanted." Those words gave Caroline pause. The sister she had secretly envied was, in turn, envying her. Ironically, Caroline had recently started questioning the stability of the very life Vanessa admired. Weeks passed, filled with wedding preparations that Caroline juggled alongside her work and family duties. One night, as she tucked Aiden into bed, he looked up at her and said, "Mom, I don't like Uncle Richard." "Why not?" she asked, kissing his forehead. "Because he always hides his phone when he sees me, like he's doing something bad." Caroline laughed softly. "I'm sure that's not the case. Uncle Richard is a busy man. He probably just handles important stuff. It's nothing." Aiden didn't look convinced, but didn't argue. Caroline dismissed it as a child's wild imagination, probably sparked by stress and excitement around the wedding. Later that evening, when she got home, Jason was in the living room talking on his cell phone. The moment he saw her enter, he ended the call abruptly. Who were you talking to? Caroline asked. Oh, just a work call, Jason replied, looking slightly uneasy. Sorry I'm late. The project's running behind. Lately, Caroline had noticed that Jason was coming home later than usual. He'd even started disappearing on weekends for so-called emergency meetings. She told herself it was just the wedding chaos making her overly suspicious. Their family was fine, or so she wanted to believe. The day before the wedding, the hotel lobby buzzed with activity. Caroline had just wrapped up a final coordination meeting with the hotel staff. The children were supposed to be playing in the pool. As she crossed the lobby, something outside caught her attention. Through the large windows overlooking the parking lot, she saw Aiden near Richard's luxury car. He was circling it, peering through the windows. Caroline rushed outside. Aiden, what are you doing? He jumped, startled. Mom, I was just checking something. Checking what? She asked, approaching him. Aiden scuffed the ground with his shoe. Nothing, he mumbled. Caroline gave him a puzzled look, but decided not to press further. Come on, pool time's over. Go shower. We have the rehearsal dinner tonight. That evening, the dinner went smoothly. Both families laughed and chatted, enjoying the celebration. But Caroline couldn't shake a sense of unease. Jason checked his phone repeatedly and even left the table once to take a call. When he returned, she leaned toward him and asked, Is everything okay? Oh, just a minor issue at work, Jason said casually. I need to take care of it tonight. Tonight? But the wedding is tomorrow, Caroline replied, her disappointment evident. I know, but it's an emergency. I'll be back in a couple of hours. Caroline felt a twinge of frustration, but didn't argue. Jason held a senior position at a construction company. Emergencies weren't uncommon. She gave him her usual understanding smile. All right, I'll take the kids back to the room. Back in the hotel room, Aiden was unusually quiet. Emma played on her tablet, but Aiden sat curled up on the bed, his chin resting on his knees, lost in thought. What's wrong, Aiden? Caroline sat beside him. When is Dad coming back? As soon as he finishes work. It's a big day tomorrow, so you should get some sleep. Aiden was silent for a while, then suddenly asked, Is Uncle Richard a good person? Caroline blinked. Of course. Why do you ask? Just because. Aiden hesitated. Never mind. Caroline kissed his forehead gently. Don't worry about things like that. Come on, let's brush your teeth and get ready for bed. After the children had fallen asleep, Jason still hadn't returned. Caroline called his phone several times, but only reached voicemail. Around midnight, the door finally creaked open and Jason entered the room. I'm sorry I'm so late, he said softly. The problem was more complicated than I expected. Caroline studied his face. He looked exhausted, but there was something else. A trace of unease. Is everything okay? She asked. Yes, we got it resolved, Jason replied, loosening his tie. Why are you still up? You should sleep. I was waiting for you, Caroline said. But deep inside, unease had begun to spread like a shadow. The morning of the wedding was lively and filled with anticipation. Caroline, dressed in her bridesmaid gown, helped Vanessa get ready in her suite. Vanessa, radiant in a white wedding dress, looked so emotional she could cry at any moment. I can't believe this day is finally here, Vanessa said, gazing out the window. Caroline, thank you so much. I couldn't have done this without you. Caroline hugged her tightly. If you're happy, that's all that matters. The ceremony unfolded beautifully. Smiles lit up every face, and the atmosphere was filled with joy. But Caroline couldn't shake a creeping discomfort. Throughout the ceremony, she noticed Jason and Vanessa exchanging glances more than once. At one point, it even looked like Jason winked at her. Was it just a friendly, brother-in-law gesture, or something more? She tried to dismiss the thought, until she noticed Aiden, of all people, pulling out his smartphone and filming something. He rarely showed interest in technology. She shot him a warning look, silently urging him to stop. Aiden met her gaze, paused, and then kept recording. As the reception began and the room filled with music and laughter, Caroline saw Vanessa excuse herself to go to the restroom. Thinking she might need help with her dress or makeup, Caroline followed. What she saw in the hallway stopped her cold. Vanessa stepped out of the restroom, and Jason was waiting for her. They exchanged a few quiet words. Then Jason placed his hand on her arm and leaned in, whispering something. The look they shared didn't resemble that of in-laws. It was too close, too familiar. Caroline froze, heart racing, hidden behind a nearby wall. Moments later, the two walked off in opposite directions. Caroline stood there for a moment, stunned, then forced herself to return to the dance floor. Her legs felt weak, her expression stiff. She smiled for the guests, for the children, for Vanessa. But inside, everything had shifted. After dinner, as the dancing began, Caroline returned to the table and noticed that Aiden looked unusually agitated. He kept checking his phone, glancing around nervously. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. Aiden looked up at her, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll tell you later." There was something in his eyes, a seriousness far beyond his years. Caroline felt a ripple of anxiety, but she just nodded and stroked his hair. Okay. On the dance floor, the bride and groom's first dance had just ended. Vanessa shone in her white gown, a vision of happiness, while Richard gazed at her with open affection. Then the MC took the microphone. And now, a special moment, a dance by the bride's sister, Caroline Foster, and her husband, Jason. Caroline stood, heart pounding, and walked with Jason to the dance floor. He placed one hand gently on her waist and took her other hand. The music started, slow and graceful. "You look beautiful," Jason murmured. "That dress really suits you." Caroline tried to smile. "Thank you," but a weight pressed against her chest. Jason pulled her closer. "Is something bothering you?" "No, nothing," she lied. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught sight of Vanessa chatting with a guest, her laughter bright and carefree. Caroline told herself it was all in her head. Her sister was glowing, and surely there was nothing inappropriate going on. Her suspicions had to be baseless. When the dance ended, she returned to their table and found Aiden waiting, his small face tight with anxiety. He clutched her phone with both hands. "Mom, we need to go." "Now," he whispered urgently. All around them, guests were laughing. Music played cheerfully, and clinking glasses echoed through the room. Caroline forced a calm smile, leaning down. "Why?" Aiden glanced around, then carefully pulled out his phone. "Look at this." Caroline took the phone and froze. On the screen was a photo of Jason and Vanessa in the hotel lobby, holding hands, talking closely. The timestamp was from the day before the wedding. She felt her stomach drop. Swiping through, she found more photos, the two of them embracing in a hallway, speaking quietly in a car. Her breath caught. "I borrowed Emma's tablet," Aiden said softly, and a message came in from Dad. "I opened it by accident, and there were all these pictures of Dad and Aunt Vanessa." Caroline's hands trembled. "Aiden, I'm sorry, Mom," he said, voice cracking. "But I knew Dad was doing something bad. Poor Uncle Richard." Tears welled in his eyes, and Caroline pulled him into a hug. "You didn't do anything wrong. Thank you for telling me." He nodded quickly, still shaken. "Yesterday, when we got to the hotel, I took some pictures with Emma's tablet. I saw Dad talking to Aunt Vanessa in the lobby. When he saw me, he tried to hide something." Caroline looked down at the phone again, scrolling through the evidence. In the last photo, Vanessa was handing Jason a document, something official looking. Then came the messages. She scrolled, reading snippets of conversations that shattered the foundation of her world. Their relationship had been going on for years. Caroline sat frozen. Not only had Jason betrayed her, but Richard, so clearly in love, had no idea what was happening behind his back. "Mom," Aiden said quietly, "Dad and Annie are doing something really bad. Poor Uncle Richard." "Let's go home, Mom," Aiden pleaded softly. Caroline's mind was a whirlwind. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a lifetime of trust. They all teetered on the edge of collapse. And her sister, the person she had loved and trusted most. There had always been a thread of rivalry between them since childhood, but betrayal had never crossed her mind. Around them, the wedding reception continued in full swing. Laughter, applause, music. It all felt distant, muffled like echoes from another world. Caroline stood frozen in a daze, unable to reconcile the joy around her with the storm inside her chest. "Mom, are you okay?" Aiden's small voice cut through the noise. She looked down into his eyes, clear, steady, and full of concern. She was overwhelmed by her son's quiet bravery. Despite his age, he had carried this terrible secret and still chosen to do what was right. That strength moved her deeply. "Aiden," she said softly, pulling him into a hug, "thank you for showing me. You're a brave and honest boy." But she knew she couldn't simply walk away. "We can't leave just yet," she whispered. "I need to tell Uncle Richard the truth." Aiden's eyes widened. "Uncle Richard?" "Yes. He deserves to know. This is a grown-up problem, but because of you, I can face it the right way." Caroline took a steadying breath and stood up. Wiping away any trace of tears, she held Aiden's hand tightly. "Let's go together." They moved through the crowded room, scanning the faces and searching the hall. Finally, they spotted Richard in a quiet corner, chatting with a group of business associates. Caroline took a deep breath. Her heart was pounding. "Richard," she said as calmly as she could manage, "could I speak with you for a moment? It's important." He turned toward her, concern flickering in his eyes. "Of course." He excused himself and followed Caroline and Aiden out of the reception hall. The night air in the garden was crisp, the soft sounds of celebration drifting from afar. They stopped in a secluded corner beneath the lights strung through the trees. "I need to tell you something," Caroline began. "It's not easy, but—" She looked down at Aiden, then back at Richard. "Aiden discovered something, and I believe you have the right to see it." She handed him the phone. Richard took it, brows furrowed, and began to scroll through the photos. His face shifted from confusion to realization to disbelief and finally to raw pain. "How long?" he asked, his voice rough. "I don't know," Caroline replied honestly. "Aiden came across it by accident. He wanted to do the right thing." Richard exhaled slowly, like the weight of the images was pressing against his chest. He handed the phone back without a word at first. "I always had a feeling," he said finally. "Vanessa deleting texts, last-minute work excuses, but I never had proof." He looked down at Aiden and gently ruffled his hair. "Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth." Just then, a sharp voice rang out from behind them. "What are you doing?" Caroline turned, and there stood Vanessa and Jason, side by side in the garden, their faces a mix of confusion and rising panic. Vanessa stood frozen, confusion clouding her face. Jason looked equally stunned, his eyes fixed on the smartphone still in Aiden's hand. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa asked again, her voice uneasy. She glanced at Richard and seemed to register the shift in his expression. His eyes, once soft and full of love, now sharp and unreadable. "The truth seems to have come out," Richard said quietly, his voice calm but laced with hurt. He nodded toward the phone. "I didn't expect to discover this on my wedding day." Vanessa went pale. "What are you talking about?" Jason stepped forward quickly, desperate. "Richard, this is a misunderstanding. We were just talking about work." "Enough," Caroline cut in, her voice trembling. 15 years of marriage, 2 children, a family built on trust, and the two of you destroyed all of it. Vanessa, her mask slipping, suddenly lunged toward Aiden as if to grab the phone, but Richard intercepted her. He held the device firmly and tapped the screen, bringing up one of the messages. "Can we meet tonight?" "I told Richard to first have a meeting," he read aloud, his voice hollow. "So, this is the meeting you were talking about." A heavy silence fell between them. Aiden clutched Caroline's hand even tighter. Then, Vanessa broke. Tears streamed down her face. "No, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Caroline asked. "Why my husband, Vanessa?" In an instant, the tears turned to fury. "You were always the perfect one," Vanessa snapped. "The one everyone admired. Our parents loved you more. You got the grades, the praise, the perfect husband, the perfect kids. I was always in your shadow. Jason was the only one who ever really saw me." Caroline stared at her sister, speechless. All this time, she had believed she was the one envying Vanessa, but now she saw it had gone both ways. Still, none of it justified this. Richard's voice cut through the moment. "The wedding is off," he said coldly. I'll go back in and apologize to the guests. Jason finally found his voice. Caroline, please listen. Enough, she said, calm but resolute. It's over. For the children's sake, leave quietly tonight. Aiden looked up at his father, his young face wrinkled with confusion and pain. Caroline knelt and said gently, let's go get Emma and go home. She turned once more to Vanessa. Family doesn't betray each other. They lift each other up. You betrayed me, but I can't hate you. Just don't come back into my life. With Aiden's hand in hers, she walked away without looking back. Behind her, Richard was saying something to Jason and Vanessa, but Caroline didn't care to hear it. Her heart was broken, but she knew the only path forward was one built on truth. 6 months later, in a quiet, freshly built suburban neighborhood outside Chicago, Caroline stood in front of a new red brick house, unloading luggage from her car. The divorce had been finalized just a few weeks earlier. Now, she was starting fresh, with her children and with hard-won clarity. Aiden, Emma, grab your bags, she called from the front step. The children ran over, each carrying a small bag into their new home. They had just returned from a weekend with their father. Caroline had started working part-time as a counselor, using her degree in psychology, helping families navigate relationship issues, drawing from her own hard-earned insight. The children were slowly adjusting to their new routines. Aiden, in particular, had been seeing the school psychologist regularly. Some days, he still asked her, "It wasn't my fault Dad did bad things, right?" Each time, Caroline reassured him, and each time, he seemed to understand a little more. That afternoon, while she was making tea in the kitchen, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, she was surprised to find Richard standing there. Richard smiled warmly, holding a small potted plant in his hands. "A housewarming gift," he said. "I thought something that grows would be perfect for a new beginning." Caroline returned the smile and stepped aside. "Come in." Surprisingly, a quiet friendship had begun to blossom between them after the canceled wedding. The initial weeks were filled with grief and awkward silences, but one day Richard invited her out for coffee, and a conversation started that neither of them had expected. "Thank you for telling me the truth that day," he said during one of their meetings. "It hurt, but it was better than building a future on a lie." Now, sitting across from each other in her new living room, sipping coffee, Richard glanced toward the hallway where Aiden and Emma were playing. "Aiden is truly a brave kid," he said thoughtfully. "He didn't just take photos. He listened, paid attention, and followed his instincts. That takes courage. You've raised a remarkable child." Caroline smiled softly. It was a heavy experience for someone so young, but he's overcoming it. Both children had begun rebuilding their relationship with their father. Aiden, especially, struggled to understand Jason's betrayal. He still sometimes woke from nightmares, haunted by the memory of the day he handed his mother the photos. Caroline guided her children gently, teaching them that people make mistakes, and though consequences matter, those mistakes don't define everything. Thanks to therapy and patient love, Aiden had begun to enjoy visits with his father again. "I'm starting to understand that Dad really does love me," he said one day. "But why can't you and Dad be together?" Caroline always answered those questions carefully and honestly, helping her children navigate the complexities of trust, love, and boundaries. One afternoon, while scrolling through social media, she came across a photo of Jason with another woman. Comments beneath hinted that Vanessa had quietly left town and transferred to another office. Whatever had existed between them had fallen apart quickly. December. Christmas Eve. Caroline sat by the fireplace, the soft light casting flickers across the room. The past 6 months had been heavy with change. Painful, yes, but also healing. She and the children were finding their rhythm again. Then the doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found Vanessa standing there. Her sister looked thin, worn, and smaller than Caroline remembered. There was no trace of vanity or defense in her expression, only remorse. "Do you have time to talk?" Vanessa asked quietly. "I broke up with Jason. It wasn't just him, it was everything. It was a mistake." Caroline hesitated, but only for a moment. She looked at her sister's tired eyes and saw someone who wasn't proud, but was trying. The kids will be happy, she said gently. It's a special day. Come in. Vanessa stepped inside, just as Aiden appeared in the hallway. He froze at first, surprised, then offered a shy wave. Merry Christmas, Annie. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. Merry Christmas, she whispered back. The question, what is a real family, didn't have an easy answer. It wasn't just about shared blood or a shared home. It was about trust, honesty, and sometimes forgiveness. Aiden's brave act had shaken their world, but in doing so, he'd reminded them of what mattered most: relationships built on truth. Rebuilding a family was no simple task. But that Christmas Eve, they had taken the first steps toward healing, toward honesty, and toward each other.